Worst animal attacks, part 1. So first we got Dawn Brancheau. So if you didn't know, Dawn was a trainer at SeaWorld, and she had worked with orcas for around 15 years. So on February 24th of 2010, Dawn was performing with SeaWorld's biggest killer whale, Tilikum. Dawn was on a platform next to Tilikum's head with her head hanging off as she was halfway submerged, and Tilikum grabbed onto her ponytail and yanked her underwater. Employees tried to distract Tilikum with nets and what have you, but to no avail. Dawn stayed submerged for 45 minutes and ended up drowning. Her autopsy revealed that she had a severed spine, fractured ribs, fractured jawbone, and cervical vertebrae. Her left knee and elbow were dislocated, and her scalp was completely ripped off. After this, SeaWorld was fined $75,000 for endangering its employees, so that's kind of scary. Worst animal attacks, part 2. In June of 2003, Griffin was chilling with his friends swimming in the Dead River north of Orlando. Where they were swimming was near a boat ramp and restaurant, and people frequently threw out discarded food and fish in this area. But the boys had been seeing alligators all day and would get out every time they seen them. The boys then spotted another alligator, and this time Brian refused to get out of the water even after his friend Justin tried pulling him out of the water. Brian then swam 20 feet from shore and went under. At first, the boys thought it was a joke because he had already played a few pranks on him earlier that day, but he soon came up from the water screaming, "Help, help, I don't want to go." Brian resubmerged under the water and then wasn't spotted again until he came up in the gator's jaws and then went underwater again for about 25 minutes. Authorities soon found his body and he was pronounced dead at the hospital. Worst animal attacks, part 3. Next we have Timothy Treadwell. Timothy was a bear enthusiast and movie maker. Timothy spent 13 summers living in a national park in Alaska, studying brown bears. On October 6th of 2003, a pilot showed up to Timothy and his girlfriend's Alaskan campsite, but the couple were nowhere to be found, and there was only a bear roaming around. Park rangers were called, and they soon found Timothy and his girlfriend's mangled bodies. If you're brave enough, you can go check out a 6-minute clip of the couple, the audio of them getting attacked. So yeah, that's pretty scary. Worst animal attacks, part 4. So next up we got surfer Bethany Hamilton. If you've seen the movie Soul Surfer, you know kind of this story already, but Bethany started surfing at around 3, started gaining more attention, and got some sponsorship around age 9. When she was 13, on October 31st of 2003, Bethany went surfing with her friend Alana, along with Alana's brother and her dad. As Bethany laid face down on her surfboard with her arm dangling over into the water, a tiger shark jumped up and attacked her, biting off her arm. She was rushed to the hospital and had lost a lot of blood and was in shock, but she ended up surviving. As for the shark, it was hunted down and killed. So yeah, that's pretty scary. Worst animal attacks, part 5. So in the spring of 2011, Wesley, along with his friend Dan and Dan's son, were hunting bears in Nome, Alaska. The guys were riding along on snowmobiles when they saw a bear, so they stopped. Wesley went to reach for his and a bear attacked him. Unbeknownst to them, this bear was hiding in a snow cave about 69 feet away, so when they stopped, this bear performed a whole-ass sneak attack. This bear full-on snatched Wesley by his head, tore up his lower jaw, bit up on his tongue, and tore up his left eye socket. Wesley's friends opened fire on this bear, and it ended up about 40 yards away. Wesley ended up surviving, but with some severe damage to his face, and he ended up having to undergo 26 surgeries. That's pretty dang scary. Worst animal attacks, part 9. On August 5th of 2013, police respond to the home of John Claude Savoie, and once there, they found the bodies of 6- and 4-year-old Noah and Connor Barth. Also found in the laundry room is a 4-meter python. Autopsy determined that the COD was asphyxia by constriction. Both boys had bite marks on them as well as pattern abrasions on their skin. Jean-Claude's son was also present, but he was unharmed as he was sleeping in a different room. The night prior, the boys had been having a sleepover with John's son, and they stayed the night, and this apartment was above a pet store which he owned. Sometime during the night, the python escapes from its enclosure through a vent hole which was missing its cap, and it falls in the living room through the ceiling where the boys are sleeping. While both boys are sleeping, this snake wraps itself around them, and yeah, they're gone. When police arrived on scene, they did say that the python snapped its jaws at them, but yeah, John Claude was charged with criminal negligence. Worst animal attacks, Part 10. This is the story of Cassandra Klein. 45-year-old mother and kindergarten teacher Cassandra Klein, along with her husband, had a home in Sea Pines on Hilton Head Island in South Carolina. On August 20th of 2018, Cassandra would be walking her dog near the golf course when she would encounter a gator. The gator tried attacking her dog, but she tried to protect the dog, and it was her that was dragged in the water instead. A bystander saw the struggle and called the cops immediately before trying to get in the water and help, but police showed up and retrieved Cassandra from the water, but it was too late. The only slight positive note I can offer here is that she did have injuries on her arms and hands, which showed that she did put up a pretty good fight. Worst animal attacks, Part 11. This is the story of Akbar Salabiro. Akbar was 25 years old and lived in Indonesia. On March 25th of 2017, Akbar would tell his fellow villagers that he was heading over to a harvest at a nearby village, but he never returned. Akbar would be reported missing and his fellow villagers would begin looking for him. In his backyard, they would find a 23-foot python. The villagers noticed that its stomach was particularly large, so they cut it open in suspicion that Akbar was inside, and they were right. If you know anything about snakes, you know these snakes normally wrap themselves around prey and suffocate them and then eat them whole. When his body was removed, he was still fully clothed. Contrary to popular belief, this isn't something that happens a lot, but it does happen. Worst animal attacks, Part 12. This is the case of Taylor Mitchell. This is 19-year-old Canadian folk singer Taylor Mitchell. On October 27th of 2009, Taylor would go for a hike in Cape Breton Highlands National Park in Nova Scotia, Canada. Just before 3 on that day, 2 American hikers passed Taylor going in opposite directions on the path. Moments later, they would pass 2 coyotes who were acting particularly aggressive and not fearful, going in the direction of Taylor. And then after 3 o'clock, people would claim to hear coyotes howling as well as screams. This would lead the American hikers to call the authorities. Authorities would show up, and at around 3:20, they would find Taylor's body on the ground with coyotes chewing on her. Numerous items of Taylor's would be found on the trail, such as her keys, a pocket knife, and bloody clothing. It's believed that they chased her into a nearby bathroom area type thing and then overtook her and drug her back out. Her COD was severe blood loss. Worst animal attacks, Part 12. So, pictured here is 66-year-old Dave Martin, who would frequently run triathlons, so he would go swimming weekly to train for these triathlons. In April of 2008, David was swimming off the coast of Solana Beach in Florida when a great white shark attacked him. Witnesses say they saw him be violently pulled out of the water and then jerked back under, and then his friends rushed to his side. But it was too late as the massive wounds quickly took their toll and David's life was gone. This was the first fatality due to shark attack in 49 years for that county of Florida. Worst animal attacks, Part 13. This is the case of Anthony Hensley. Anthony was 37 and from Illinois, and he worked for a company that used swans and dogs to keep geese away from properties around a Des Plaines pond. On April 14th of 2012, Anthony was kayaking across this pond while on the job, and he got too close to one of the swans' nests, which prompted at least one of them to start attacking him, which resulted in him flipping out of his kayak. Anthony was wearing boots and heavier clothing, which made it harder for him to swim, let alone with a swan attacking you. So with the heavy clothing and the swan preventing him from surfacing, he ultimately drowned. It was ruled an accident, and he leaves behind a wife and 2 kids. Worst animal attacks, Part 16. This is the case of Jordan Lindsay. In late June of 2019, 21-year-old college student Jordan Lindsay would be vacationing in the Bahamas with her family. On the morning of June 26th, the family would wake up and try to find something to do. They would come across a tour company that would take them on an excursion to Rose Island with the promise of beautiful snorkeling and these swimming pigs that you can swim with and pet. The family would arrive at the island in the early afternoon, and Jordan and her mom would decide to go snorkeling, and the rest of the family would go swim with these pigs. At around 1:15, Jordan's mom would turn just in time to see and hear Jordan screaming and 3 tiger sharks circling her as the water turned red. Jordan's mom would swim over and grab her daughter, trying to swim to shore while punching these sharks in the face in the process. By the time they get to shore, Jordan's right arm is severed and both legs are ravaged. There would be no medical equipment on the boat, and Jordan would pass before they could get help. Worst animal attacks, part 17, the hippo that would go from pet to mauling its owner. Here we have 40-year-old Marius Els with his pet hippo, Humphrey. They were from South Africa, and he had raised Humphrey like a son since he was 5 months old. When he was just a baby, Humphrey was rescued from a flood on the river, and he was adopted, but grew too big for the people who adopted him, and Marius bought him from them. Despite repeated warnings that they cannot be tamed, Marius would be seen riding on Humphrey, petting him, swimming with him, all the above. He was quoted saying, "They say you can only have a relationship with dogs, cats, and domestic animals, but I have a relationship with the most dangerous animal in Africa." On one occasion, Humphrey chased a grandfather and grandson who were canoeing across the river that ran through Marius's farm, up a tree, and Marius would soon have to tempt Humphrey away with an apple. On November 14th of 2011, Marius's lifeless body would be found submerged in the water with bites all over him. This was the same river Humphrey was rescued in. Worst animal attacks, part 18. This is the cassowary attack on Marvin Hajos. In case you haven't heard of them, this is a cassowary. They are a flightless bird closely related to an emu. They can run around 30 miles per hour, jump 7 feet in the air, and are skilled swimmers. They can grow up to be 5 to 6 foot tall, with the males weighing up to around 120 and the females weighing up to around 165. And that brings us to 75-year-old Marvin, who kept a cassowary on his farm in Florida. In April of 2019, Marvin would fall near the fenced-in area where the bird was kept, but within striking distance. Marvin would be found unresponsive and barely breathing and go into cardiac arrest. About 12 minutes later, on the way to the hospital, he would pass. He would have more than a dozen lacerations to his face, neck, abdomen, legs, and right arm, with his brachial artery severely damaged. After all of this, the bird would soon be sold at a livestock auction. Worst animal attacks, part 19. This is the case of Patty McConnell and her 13-year-old son, Kelly. It was August 14th of 1997 when 37-year-old Patty, along with her son, were walking the boardwalk at Laird Hot Springs in British Columbia. Patty would hear a noise and turn around and pretty much be face to face with a black bear. The bear would come crashing through the wooden barriers of the boardwalk, and the two would run up to a observation point, but it would be a dead end. The bear would soon pounce on Patty and start tearing into her chest, face, and neck. Kelly would find a large stick and hit the bear in the nose, causing this bear to attack him. Their screams would attract 56-year-old trucker Ray Kitchen, who would come in and the bear would tackle him, sending them both through the wooden barrier, tumbling into the woods. After this, 3 more people show up, and one of them ends up running off to get more help, while the other 2 try to fight off this bear. During this time, the bear would pick Ray up, slice his throat, nearly decapitating him. The friend would soon arrive back with help and shoot the bear. After all of this, Patty and Ray would both pass. Worst animal attacks, part 20. This is the case of Manuel Lopez. Manuel Lopez was a 53-year-old family man who was a fisherman as well as a commercial diver. On January 5th of 2003, Manuel would decide to go diving for mollusks in Tabari Bay in the Gulf of California. The locals warned Manuel about the dangers of diving at this time because from December to January, large pregnant female great white sharks will migrate to this area to feed on sea lions and seals on the coastline. With the fact that he had a family and needed money, he decides to get in the water, and by 11:30 that morning, he was 50 feet down. While he was down there collecting the mollusks, there were 2 people in the boat above him, making sure everything was going smoothly, and he was staying kind of anchored to them. Out of nowhere, the ropes tethered to him would start to go tight and just zigzag. They start pulling these ropes, and then they soon see what they guess is a 19-foot shark. Come to find out, this shark had completely taken Manuel's head and shoulders off.